As India and the United States, the trade talks enter the final stage, government sources have revealed to CNN News 18 that both sides are showing rare flexibility to break the deadlock. India is likely to offer tariff relief on select American electronics. That's a move aimed at easing trade flows. In return, the United States is considering concessions on genetically modified agricultural products, as well as limited access to American dairy exports into India. However, India has firmly rejected broader dairy access, citing the need to protect millions of livelihoods in the domestic dairy industry. India is also pushing hard for greater access for its labor-intensive exports, including textiles, jewelry, carpets, gems, and footwear. With both sides showing signs of flexibility, a long-awaited trade deal could now be within reach. However, agriculture and dairy remain key red lines for India. Sources further say that India has made it clear that opening up the dairy sector is not on the table, as it's a cornerstone of the rural economy. The government maintains that farmer interests will not be compromised under any circumstances.
These tariffs are a way for countries to meet us at a place of fairness, that the United States has an open economy, but what we have seen is that there are unfair trade policies that have really impacted U.S. farmers, industries. And so we want to see trade that is fair, that is reciprocal, working closely. India is an essential partner in the Indo-Pacific, is an essential partner in the Quad, and we fully expect that all of our partners can understand why this is so important to an America First agenda, that we look for trade policies that really have a fairness, reciprocal, balanced way to ensure that all parties are benefiting.
I want to go across to our Sanjay Suri, who's tracking this story. So Sanjay, today is the 3rd and tomorrow is, of course, the American Independence Day. Can we expect an announcement by Trump or by the White House spokesperson today? Because if it doesn't happen today, then I guess we'll have to wait till next week to get past the Independence Day weekend.
Well, the first announcement Trump will want to make is on that big, beautiful bill on the economy. That is going through the Congress. We've had hours of speech from the Democrat leader in the House. So pass that and pass a vote that will go the Republican way, as the government believes in the U.S. and as is widely expected. That will be the priority for Trump. But of course, then this is one deal he'll certainly want to announce. And this is where there is an issue. Simply his desire to make an announcement from Trump is never short of a grand announcement. We know, and as you've been reporting, that dairy products is not something that India can give way on easily at all. This could affect hundreds of millions of Indian farmers on the margin, because the American pricing structure is fed by subsidies, and that can lead to dumping that the Indian consumer may not be able to deal with, and more than the consumer, the farmers and the producers may not be able to deal with. So that's an area of difference, and we've got to see how that's negotiated. That certainly is a very strong push from the US. There's a strong pushback against it from India. We'll have to see how that plays out, and whether Trump would then be willing to make an announcement of a deal that's necessarily a compromise deal, and not just agricultural goods and dairy products. Also, the auto industry, India cannot possibly do all that the US wants. But if there is flexibility on both sides, and some flexibility from the US, then we could be looking at an announcement.
All right, Sanjay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. You also saw that graphic. The 4 items which seem to be the sticking points are corn or maize, soybean, ethanol, and of course you have the dairy products that Sanjay was referring to a moment ago, which is cheese and milk and other dairy products. Here's a quick explainer on what these sticking points are and why there is so much back and forth between India and the United States. I've tried to break it down in as simple a language as possible. All right, so what are the sticking points in the Indo-US bilateral trade arrangement that both sides have been negotiating for a while? The number one point is on agri-imports. It boils down to 3 or 4 items. Number 1, corn or maize. Number 2, soybean. These are items which India has very little import from the United States. Much of it is homegrown. And the other contentious part in agri-imports is the United States wants India to import some genetically modified crop, including in these 2 that I just mentioned, that is corn or maize, as well as soybean. The second one is market access for US dairy items, cheese, milk, and other dairy products. One of the concerns that India has is some of the bovine feed is made out of blood and made out of other carnivorous elements, which is meant for the feed that is given to the cattle. India wants to avoid that kind of stuff as well. And number three, there are two sectors that India has concerns in terms of Indian exports that are going into the United States, which are labor-intensive sectors. One is textiles. India exports about 15 to 25% of its textile exports go to the United States market. And the other labor-intensive sector is leather. So textiles and leather are two big sectors as far as India is concerned, where they want to make sure that there isn't a direct impact on the large number of livelihoods that are dependent on the textile and leather sector. And number five, there's also the high employment sectors like electronics, for example. India currently manufactures about 15% of all the world's iPhones. Over the course of this next decade, India wants to amp that up. In fact, Apple wants to amp that up from 15% to 25%. So those are heavy employment-driven sectors, and therefore India wants to ensure that this bilateral trade arrangement, this limited trade arrangement that is likely to be announced before the 9th of July, the deadline that was set by the Trump administration, has elements where India's interests, whether it's agriculture or whether it is labor-intensive sectors, are protected.